So here's the work I'm doing to replace the stock steering rack with the quick ratio Quaife rack. So this is Quaife on this side, and this is the original GTI standard rack. You can just see obviously that the teeth are spaced wider apart with the Quaife unit. The kit came with a couple things. It came with the spacer, which, you know, you look where the pinion goes, and that isn't needed. This bearing is right as it is, so that must be for, you know, there must be two different size units. All I had to do was press on this bearing, which wasn't too much work, put it in a vise and tapped it with the rubber mallet, and then there's a circlip, retaining clip here, which the stock one doesn't have, which is nice. I guess I don't think it's going to back out, but maybe it could. I'm waiting. Well, tomorrow I should go pick up. There's a company on eBay that makes the spacer. I think maybe it's Tech 53. Anyway, they make a Delrin spacer. This one I don't think is a problem, or a bushing. I think this one probably is absolutely fine. Doesn't seem to have any slack in it, but I will slip the other one in. You don't remove the this one that's pressed in. You just slip the other one in. It takes up a little bit of the additional slack, if there is any. So that's about it. You sort of slide it together and tighten the plunger just until you've got no wiggle, no play, and then you're done. So you can always adjust it when it's in the car if you think it needs tightening. But you know, if your steering rack gets a little bit tight, you can feel it, right? It just doesn't turn freely. So you sort of tweak it until it's perfect. So anyway, there you go. I'm about to put it together, and it's been very straightforward doing this. It's only been about, other than cleaning up the old rack and all the fiddling, once the rack was clean, it's maybe an hour total to do this once the rack's out of the car. Okay, a little update. So these are the same diameter within a few thou, which is what you would expect, and this end is sloppy here. Like there's some play in it. So I'm hoping that replacement bushing will take up the slack. Otherwise I'm going to knock this spacer out, and I will either machine it out of Delrin or brass, because this is not tight enough. There's definitely some play in it. I'll put it in, I'll show you in a second. So if I take it and I move it up, if we can hear it, so there's so much construction in my neighborhood right now. Anyway, there's definitely enough play that, I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but it's moving back and forth. It's not good. Anyway, I will deal with that. So that's gonna complicate things a little bit. So I got the unit done. I got the Quaife quick ratio installed. The bushing that went in the end on this side over here, the aftermarket bushing was actually a little bit too tight, so I had to ream it out just a tiny amount, and now it has zero play and should be good to go. So I'm super happy. I can go to bed here and feel good about it. Well, I'm working on the headlight housings. I've stripped them all down, and I've got a little bit of this super concentrated hydrochloric acid. It's 36% pure hydrochloric acid, and it's a lot faster at etching any rust that I don't get off with the I use the Eastwood fast etch, which is pretty good, but it's not as powerful, and I use this stuff undiluted as you know, in areas that I need to work on. Here's my setup, and I've finished plating this part. Basically I'm painting this thing, so it's just I'm giving it a protective layer underneath the paint, and looks like catching a fish. Haha. So there it is. I zoom back out. It's ready to be dried off, washed and dried off, and then the next part goes into the bath, and it's got a protective layer of zinc on it. And here's one that's just been, whoops, where is it? There it is, just been done. So that'll, you let these things air dry for about a day before you really should handle them. Some people say 2 or 3 days. I'm not trying to make it shiny like those parts over there, because this is a rough surface is actually better, so I don't put the brightener in it and don't polish the surface. So the epoxy will grab it a lot better when I'm painting it. So there we go. So let's talk about motor mounts here. There's 4, right? There's the front, and then there's the rear, and then the 2 side mounts. So pretty much close to the stock front mount. It has that profile to it, made out of softer durometer rubber, and then there's a heavier duty version of rubber, a little stronger. Then you can go to a softer urethane, so it's obviously stronger and thicker than this guy, but less than this, which is really stiff and would definitely transmit a lot of noise. They say the culprit for major transmission of noise is the transmission mount, the rear mount, and so I'm just using sort of a heavy duty rubber one there. I haven't even bothered considering anything else, but I've been wondering about either of these 2 for the front. I think I'm going to ask Josh, my engine builder, let him watch this video, if he's okay with me using this softer urethane one, because he thinks that we get a lot of power and we want to control it. We don't want the engine rocking, but we don't necessarily want to make this an uncivilized ride. So maybe the compromise is this plus this, front to rear. And then side to side, here's what I'm thinking. Here's replacement male German mounts, and I've got a hard urethane insert for each of them. Once again, I'm going to ask Josh whether he likes this idea or not. These things can get torn up, you know. They take a certain amount of abuse and then they just pack it in. They just sort of suspending the engine on these rubber hangers, and they will eventually give out. And these are just side to side motion, and of course I've got this for one side of each at least. So the question is this going to be too harsh? It's still got rubber, but it's not going to let it suspend very much. It's going to kind of have a hybrid. So that's the question of the day. And then they'll get pressed in to each of those mounts there, and it'll be good. By the way, this the way I've got the engine set up, this bracket, which has got an angle to it, I'm going to have to cut a piece of metal to flatten out that bracket, because I'm not using, in the timing belt area, I'm not using any of the other plates that thing sandwiches into, so I'm going to have to do something there. And then I've got my shift linkage stuff that I'm sorting out, because I'm going to be installing this soon. There you go. So I've shot a separate video on that Mastercool hydraulic brake flaring tool. It's awesome. So got all the lines done, and so you can see the master cylinder and the forcing valve are all wired up, and then you've got the lines running. I've got them wrapped in plastic when they go against the body of the car, so that they don't get any vibration damage. And I've got the heat shielding everywhere on the car. I'll show you. Oh, by the way, so that's the Tektronix front brace that will clear the race headers. The cross brace wouldn't. And there's the back up a little bit. There's the front engine mount brace, and I haven't got it fitted yet. I have to screw around and make some adapters, but basically it bolts into where the front fender bolts on both sides, and then it supports the engine, that front mount area. So yeah, so the brake lines run along the car to a T here, splitting off to the rear axle at the top, running down to the rear axle at the bottom. And you see I've got the e-brakes set up, the emergency brakes set up now as well. So I got my nice clean custom job where I've made these tubes that take the lines under and around. So basically we keep them out of the way. And then I've got heat shielding, the Thermotech heat shielding in the tunnel area and on the firewall, so that we can keep the heat down, especially with the race headers. And instead of using metal shields, this material. So same thing on the gas tank, and in this area in the back here where the muffler is, and the muffler gets hot and radiates all that energy out. So we've got it protecting this whole area in here. Only other thing, I'm working on brackets and pulleys and all kinds of stuff. So I've got all kinds of things that are being cleaned and etched and painted, so that I can start putting the car together, because I have to put the shift linkage in next, and this little baby here needs to go in with the rest of the linkage. Getting ready to put the engine in, or at least flip the car over next week. And over here, made a couple quick changes to the rear axle. I mean, obviously the Southern California cylinder heads, SCCH, makes spherical bearings. I just couldn't get a hold of the guys, they weren't responsive, but I've used these Delrin bushings from Leela Motorsport. And you know, the way the stock ones work is there's a bonded rubber bushing, and basically this piece is you know, physically attached to the rubber, and the rubber is under torsion. So you tighten this bolt, and it holds the center metal bushing that the rubber is bonded to, and then this is bonded to the rubber, and so it's the rubber that moves. Nothing else moves. The rubber is the thing that goes back and forth. I had to read the Bentley manual to figure that out. And then when you go and you switch, if you don't have spherical bearings, you don't actually have a bearing surface anywhere, and so that's the problem with this Leela Autosport setup. I mean, it's not a problem, it's just that the bearing surface, there's no logical area for the bearing surface. So I ended up, rather than having the stainless bolt rubbing against the cadmium plated regular steel washer, which would eventually gouge it, I think, or running this excessively loosely, which same thing, I'd end up, you know, with movement and gouging. It's almost worse to have it loose. I've got this very thin stainless steel washer, and right now the movement is between these two pieces of stainless steel, and then the internal steel bushing and the steel bolt, which is, I think, the best way to do it. So I've got both sides set up now, and I've used high pressure moly grease, because we do have metal on metal. It's not a spherical bearing, but this is nice and tight. You know, it's going to move fine, but there's absolutely no play. It's rigid, so I've only got one degree of movement. So anyway, there we go. I'm working on the rack and pinion. I'm just about finished pushing in the new end bushing, and then when that's done, I can mount it here, mount up the A-arms and all the other little bits before I flip it over. Same thing with the rear. I'll put the axle in this week with the suspension, and then I can flip the car over, and then I can put the engine in. I'm still waiting for the pressure plate, but according to Josh, it'll be here in maybe 2 weeks or less. So I'm looking forward to getting the engine in here.